Hi everyone, I'm Amber and this is my video on predictive research. So the first question is, can Mark argue that Jason gave him consent? And for my first on Westlaw, under the Maryland jurisdiction, I searched intoxicated with consent, assault, and battery in the same sentence and found the case Janelsons versus Button. And within this case, Janelsons, who works at a bar, becomes overly intoxicated, and the owner of the bar, Janelson's boss, asks Button, another bar employee, to help get him home. But while trying to get Janelson into the vehicle, Janelson starts to resist and threaten Button and the other employees who were also helping to get him home. And while trying to push Janelson's legs into the vehicle, Janelson ends up kicking Button in the face and causing him to lose a tooth. And Janelson's defense is that he believes that Button assumes the risk. He assumes that Button was aware of all the risks that could happen to him while trying to get him home safely, since he was intoxicated. But the court ruled that Janelson will be liable for Button's civil battery. So, for the first question, can Mark argue that Jason gave him consent? I believe that the court would rule that as no. So the next question is, could Jason counter that he only authorized a stomach punch? I searched the phrase voluntarily intoxicated with the phrase contributory negligence in the same paragraph, and found the case Smith versus Kaholakula. This case isn't binding, but from a Alabama jurisdiction, it explains voluntary intoxication and also contributory negligence. And in this case, Smith and two other friends who were walking home from a bar, they were all drinking, but when Smith and his friends were crossing the street, Smith ends up being struck by Kaholakula's car, and Kaholakula, who was also under the influence, and the court ruled that this contributory to negligence caused him to be struck by another vehicle. Jason countered that he only authorized a stomach punch. I believe that the court would say no because of Jason's contributory to negligence, disintoxication. And the next question, could Jason counter that his intoxication negated his request? According to Smith versus Kaholakula and contributory negligence, my search on Westlaw, I searched consent with assault in the same sentence and found this case, McQuiggan versus Boy Scouts of America. And this case is about a Boy Scout who with other boys were voluntarily shooting paper clips at each other. That resulted in McQuiggan being hit in the eye, but because he was contributory negligent and consented to the battery, consented to participate, he should have assumed the risk of all the injuries that could happen to him. So the court favor of the appellant. And for my next search on law, I wanted to search a case, or I wanted to find a case that included consent to assault, but while intoxicated. So I said intoxicate. With consent and also civil in the same sentence, and I found Mitchell versus Montgomery County. And for the last question, will the court grant to dismiss Mark's motion? And because according to Mitchell versus Montgomery County, a person who is under the influence are still accountable for their own safety. Because like in the previous case, a person who is voluntarily intoxicated must use the same care as a sober person would in a similar situation. And in Mitchell versus Montgomery County, Mitchell, who is under the influence of drugs and alcohol, is hit by a city bus, and his defense is that he isn't liable for his injuries because of the negligence of the bus that hit him, but because he was under the influence, the court ruled against him and said that he was responsible for all the assumed risk that could happen to him under the influence. So back to the final question, I do believe the court would grant Mark's motion to dismiss.